99% of golfers, when they buy a driver, they're expecting something positive in game improvement. Less than 1 in 5 people bought new wedges with the expectation to improve their wedge game. They bought them because the grooves are worn out, or hey, I just want to try a different loft. But the reason is, and my anecdotal evidence from thousands of interviews at demo days over the last 30 years, people have bought new wedges repeatedly and their wedge game didn't get better, so they've lost hope. I mean, if you think about it, people buy 40% as many wedges as they buy drivers, but they carry 3 times as many wedges as drivers. I mean, I've heard it a jillion times. I'm a crappy wedge player. Well, why do you say that? Well, I played these, I played these, I played these. I'm just no good. Well, you played the same golf club with 3 different brand names on it, first of all, because it's a molded piece of metal. All the weight's on the bottom, and the top 2/3 of the face is thin. And it's got a heavy, stiff steel shaft, which is a big disconnect from what's in your iron. You know, it's the insanity thing. You buy the same golf club over and over and over with a different brand name on it. Of course, it's not going to get different results.
Golf Smarter number 783 is brought to you by Get Mister, the first dermatologist-developed health brand helping men build their healthiest skin without the hassle of multi-step routines. Visit GetMister.com and use Golf Smarter to unlock the limited-time exclusive offer of 25% off your first purchase. That's GETMR.com. GetMister.com and use coupon code GolfSmarter so that you can use GetMister daily. #EveryDamnDay. The wedges you play were designed for pros, not you. With Terry Koehler, the Wedge Guy.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Terry.
Yeah, it's nice to be back, Fred.
It's been a while, but it's been an eventful year since the last time we talked, especially for Edison Wedges, and we'll keep it there. Because the last time we talked, you were, the last couple times you were announcing this new company that you were getting involved with, and then you opened the doors, and we haven't talked since. So Edison Wedges, what's going on?
Well, we've had a really interesting year, of course, with COVID and business shutdowns and golf booming. I mean, you had all kind of influences out there, but, we just kind of put our nose down and said, here's who we are. Here's what we make. We know this technology works, and we've been slowly building a following and an awareness, and people coming to the website and reading what we're all about. And what we're doing is offering a very significant alternative to the historic look-alike, work-alike, play-alike tour design wedges. And I've written extensively about why wedges haven't changed while everything else has changed. And so we talk about that with customers. We provide a lot of information on the website as to why we did this, why we thought it was time, and what you're going to get with this golf club. And for the vast majority of our owners have been blissfully happy with what we're doing, because we're making a set of claims and we're delivering them. So that's kind of unique in the golf industry sometimes.
Yeah. But, it's just, to me, I love watching your progression over the years, because you're not the big major player. You're a guy who's has a craft, and you're trying to make a product to really address the everyday golfer.
Well, that's exactly right. And I've been the wedge guy for 30 years and have written my blog and done wedge companies. And, a friend of mine coined a term about me one time that I'm respectfully irreverent. There's some great talents in the golf industry, and in the wedge category, Bob Vokey and Roger Cleveland and Aaron Dill and Mike Taylor. There's some great talents in our industry, but they're all focused on tour players. And there is no place out there in golf that the tour player is more different than the rest of us than in wedge play. Wedges by nature are very elusive golf clubs. I mean, they're the hardest clubs in the bag to hit. I back that up with reams of consumer research, and there are reasons why, and I can come back to that. But if you design wedges for a tour player, you are working with very nuanced differences between what he has in his hands and this next one you're going to show him. And he can feel things in the way the club makes turf interaction, the way the ball comes off of it. I mean, a tour player can tell you, ooh, I really spun that one a lot. He's not looking at a launch monitor. He knows by feel whether that shot got a lot of spin or a little spin. And sometimes he wants a lot of spin and sometimes he doesn't want spin. And if you're trying to build a golf club for a tour player, the last thing he wants is completely different feel, completely different launch, completely different spin, completely different ball flight and distance, because you'll negate thousands of hours of practice if you make too many changes. If you give him a driver that's 9 yards further, he'll put it in the bag after one session, because that's easy. But if you give him a wedge that performs totally different, it'll set him back years and maybe take him off the tour. I mean, the best guy on tour is hitting 12 or 13 greens around, which means he's getting up and down a lot. And you can't screw with that part of his game, so to speak. And Bokeh, Cleveland, Arendelle, those guys, I mean, they know how to work with a tour player and work those nuanced changes. Meanwhile, the recreational golfer is dying with his wedges. I mean, they've told me that for years.
Oh, yeah, we are. And so what is the difference? I mean, other than, I'm talking about on the hardware side of the wedges for the tour players and the wedges for us. What is the difference? I'll just leave it at that. I'll leave it open for you.
Well, the tour player, if you watch tour golf on TV, these guys hit amazing shots of all varieties. And the tour player knows if I hit it a quarter inch toward the toe, the ball's going to come off a little more dead with a little less spin. And if I hit it a half an inch high on the face, it's going to come up a little higher, a little floatier with less spin. If I hit it low on the face, it's going to come off lower with more spin. And he does those things intentionally. The rest of us, we're moving impact around roughly a 1 inch circle on the face of the club. And if you're 105 yards with a gap wedge in your hand, you want it to go 105 yards, whether you hit it a little thin, hit it perfect, hit it a little high in the face. You want it to go 105 yards. You don't want to miss the sweet spot a quarter of an inch and have it go 96. But that's what a wedge does. And I don't think manufacturers intentionally design wedges to be unforgiving, but they intentionally design wedges to satisfy their tour staff. And as a result, they are unforgiving. And I've proven on Iron Byron, I tell people this all the time, less than 2% of golfers are playing muscle-back blade irons. But I know from robotic testing, a muscle-back blade pitching wedge of 46 or 7 degrees is more forgiving than a 46 or 7 degree wedge from that same manufacturer. Wow. Why would you want less forgiving in your wedges and when you're not even willing to play that forged blade iron because you don't think you're good enough? So it's like, if only 2% of golfers think they're good enough to play a tour player's irons, why do 98% of them think they're good enough to play a tour player's wedges? When wedges by nature are more finicky than the iron. But people, why? Because the only thing they're offered is tour-looking wedges. I mean, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to the industry, but it's a fact. If you walk into a retail store and look at the wedge display, and if you can squint your eyes and make the graphics invisible, it's all the same golf club. The weight is all on the bottom of the club. The top 3/4 of the club is very thin. And form follows function, or function follows form, actually. So, if that molded piece of metal, if 2/3 of the face is thin and you hit it up in there, the ball's not going anywhere. I'm just working on a blog article today about the difference between CG and smash factor. And everybody hung up on where the CG of the golf club is, but it's about how much mass is behind impact. So, you've got to have mass behind impact if on your high loft golf clubs, which are distance precision clubs. I mean, if you hit a gap wedge 105 every time, and you're playing against a guy that hits a gap wedge 120 when he catches it good, but sometimes it goes 125, sometimes it goes 100, you're going to beat that guy, because when you're 105, boom, it's throwing darts. You're going to hit it 105. And, if your driver goes 15 yards further every once in a while, that's great. But if your gap wedge goes 10 yards further or 15 yards shorter every once in a while, that's not so good at all. That's a distance precision club. So that's what Edison is all about, equalizing the smash factor by totally changing the way a wedge looks. And, it's kind of the old insanity. If you're happy with what you've always gotten, keep doing what you've always done. And people have wedges in their bag they bought last year that look just like the ones they took out of their bag they bought in, 2006. And those look just like the ones they bought in the late 90s. And those look just like the ones they bought in the late 80s, because that golf club hasn't really changed. I mean, I mean, and this is not opinion, this is fact. Just go look at wedges from the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s from the major brands, and the models are just not very different, not compared to drivers and hybrids and irons and putters. And so, and I think that golfers have to get out of the box, if they will. We accepted that a driver didn't have to look and sound like persimmon anymore, and we went to metal woods. And then we accepted that a driver could be loud like a beer can if it was bigger, because the ball went really good. So you have to change your expectation of what the golf club looks like in order to experience a difference in what it works like. So,
right.
I mean, if it wasn't about performance, everybody still play persimmon because they're prettier to look at. So,
pretty. We went pretty. We're talking to Terry Koehler, the Wedge Guy, currently with Edison Wedges. And he's the Wedge Guy on Golf WRX, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that where your Wedge
Guy right. Every week,
is?
Publish on Wednesday every week.
Awesome. And we'll continue the conversation because we need to get into what it is about Edison Wedges that is so appealing to amateurs. And we'll do that right after this. You know what really irks me about watching the PGA Tour on TV? And it's something most of us emulate when we play? This one will throw you because it's not what you're thinking. But I think it's incredibly irresponsible. Baseball caps. Yeah, baseball caps. Sure, they may keep the sun out of your eyes, but what protection do they offer your skin? Zip, nothing, nada. Your neck and ears are completely exposed. Are you aware that men are 3 times more likely to develop skin cancer? Well, that's why I'm so excited to introduce you to our newest sponsor, and one that perfectly fits into my demand that if I'm going to do a testimonial about a product, it needs to be relevant and helpful for the Golf Smarter community. Introducing Get Mister. Imagine if you could reduce your risk of skin cancer by 40% in seconds using one product each morning after you wash your face or shave. The Daily is the first FDA-registered moisturizer, aftershave, and safe 30 SPF sunscreen dermatologist-developed product just for men. I'll be telling you a lot more about Get Mister over the next couple months, but you should know that they're offering the Golf Smarter community 25% off your first purchase when you go to getmister.com. That's GETMR.com. And use the checkout code GolfSmarter. Look better, keep safe, and allow your skin to look younger than it has in years. This 25% discount is an exclusive limited time offer, so get over there right now. Use Golf Smarter at checkout. That's one word, Golf Smarter, when you go to getmister.com and use the Daily #EveryDamnDay. So, Terry, what do you have to do to design a wedge that is more effective for a high or middle handicap player?
Well, I look at a wedge, I start with the face profile of the golf club. When you look down at that golf club, I think we all have a pretty narrow expectation of what the face of that club looks like when we set it down behind the ball. So I don't think you can get real radical there. I mean, a wedge can't be too big because you're using it out of rough and that kind of thing, and it's going to grab up more grass. So I think it's got to be within a very narrow parameter of the length of the blade, height of the blade. From there, I think you have to have a functional sole design, and I patented this sole. I call it the Koehler sole now. It's been known as the V sole, the dual bounce sole. But I patented this sole design in the early 90s to put a high bounce on the first part of the sole and a low bounce on the second part of the sole, because a wedge sole has to be versatile. And other brands talk about all their different grinds, which is fine. And every one of those grinds is really good at one certain kind of turf or one certain kind of swing path. But nobody plays the same turf all the time. There's not a person listening to your podcast that knows what the next wedge lie is going to look like. Could be on tight turf. It could be soft. It could be in the bunker. It could be on the hard pan by the cart path. You don't know. Well, how do you pick a wedge for a certain kind of turf when you don't even know what that's going to be? Recreational golfers, sometimes we make bigger divots, sometimes we make shallower divots, and we don't have a consistent swing path. That's why we're 8s and 12s and 20 handicappers, because we don't hit it the exact same way every time. And my research into golfers on wedge play, Fred, is very simple. They say they hit the ball too high and they don't get consistent distance. And when they hit that shot high in the face, like the ball sitting up in the rough, it doesn't go anywhere. Every one of those things is built into your wedges. You can't practice that out. The only way to make a wedge work the same way every time is to hit it on the same groove every time. Because wedges are so volatile in what we call smash factor. I mean, if you just think of your wedge, if you hit it down on the third groove, all the mass of the golf club is right behind that impact point because it's all low in the club. But if the ball's sitting up a little bit and you catch it 5 or 6 grooves higher, now instead of having 70% of the mass of the club behind impact, 70% of the mass is below that impact point. And there's this thing called gear effect, which causes that to launch the ball higher with less spin. And so what I said is, okay, now that I've got a face profile I really like, now I've got a sole design I really like, I'm going to completely rearrange the mass on the back of that golf club so that I can put as close to the same amount of mass possible behind the third groove, the sixth groove, the ninth groove. So when you hit it vertically up and down the face, and you think about a wedge, it's got 50, 55, 60 degrees of loft. So by nature, it's a glancing blow to the ball. So if I can put mass more evenly behind that impact point, then I can stabilize and equalize what's called the smash factor. So whereas a typical wedge, regardless of brand, the smash factor, which is the efficiency of impact, low in the face will be 1.16 to 1.18. Behind the face, it's 0.92 to 0.95. That's a 20% fall off of energy efficiency. That ball can't go as far. Everyone knows that shot hit high in the face, you look up, it's going to be in the bunker or the creek or worse. So what we did is we equalized that smash factor where it only varies from like 1.16 to 1.07 instead of dropping all the way down to 0.92 or 0.95. So your best shots are going to be the same with our club as everybody else's. Your best shots with our club are going to fly 2 to 3 degrees lower and they're going to go 4 or 5 yards further. That's your best shot. The big difference is your worst shots are going to fly about the same, spin about the same, and go about the same distance compared to losing 40 or 50 feet, which you will with everybody else's wedge. So it really is about game improvement. It's about shot improvement. You're going to feel it high in the face, but you're not going to suffer from that. So it's kind of like the reason you play a cavity back iron and a big 460cc driver is to give you more room for error.
Right.
I mean, remember the old persimmon days? There was no room for error. You hit it either right perfect in the screws. If you missed it a quarter of an inch, you lost 20% of your distance. Well, now if you miss it a quarter inch.
I don't remember the persimmon days.
Okay. Well, you're not old enough. I am. But on a big driver.
I haven't played long enough. That's what it is.
There you go. A big driver, a quarter inch miss won't cost you but 4 or 5% distance. That's barely noticeable. But a quarter inch miss on a wedge will cost you 40, 45 feet on a 100-yard shot. That's not acceptable to me. Why should we live with that? So
what I'm hearing you say is that consumers buy wedges based on what it looks like on the face, but you design wedges with more emphasis on the bottom and the back of the club, the unsexy part of the wedge.
I think
am I missing the point here?
No, I think it's an interesting way to put it. I think when people go into a wedge rack and thinking about new wedges, okay, there's brand A, brand B, brand C that dominate the market, and they set the club down. We all like to set a club down and see what it looks like behind the ball.
Absolutely,
absolutely. And if it looks good and the graphics are pretty, and I'm going to go ahead and get that wedge. But what's really interesting, Fred, is I did research with my readers of my blog. I did a survey last summer and asked my readers, what were you looking for in your last driver? More distance, more accuracy, or both? Okay. What were you looking for in your last set of irons? More greens in regulation, more distance, both. And what were you looking for in your last wedges? Now, what's really interesting is 99% of golfers, when they buy a driver, they're expecting something positive in game improvement. They buy a set of irons, they buy a putter, they're expecting something positive in game improvement. Less than 1 in 5 people bought new wedges with the expectation to improve their wedge game.
What's the expectation?
They bought them because the grooves are worn out, or, hey, I just want to try a different loft. But the reason is, and my anecdotal evidence from thousands of interviews at demo days over the last 30 years, people have bought new wedges repeatedly, and their wedge game didn't get better, so they've lost hope.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you think about it, people buy 40% as many wedges as they buy drivers, but they carry 3 times as many wedges as drivers. Well, they've lost hope.
And probably hit it more.
Yeah, and they hit it more. And they've lost hope in buying wedges because, I mean, I've heard it a jillion times. I'm a crappy wedge player. Well, why do you say that? Well, I played these, I played these, I played these. I'm just no good. Well, you played the same golf club with 3 different brand names on it, first of all, because it's a molded piece of metal. All the weight's on the bottom, and the thinnest, and the top 2/3 of the face is thin. And it's got a heavy, stiff steel shaft, which is a big disconnect from what's in your iron. You know, it's the insanity thing. You buy the same golf club over and over and over with a different brand name on it. Of course, it's not going to get different results. Just can't. I mean, a wedge, with few exceptions, a wedge, what you see is what you get. I mean, a driver, there's all kind of pixie dust going on inside that driver. There's a lot of technologies in that driver. With that wedge, it's a molded piece of metal. What you see is what you get. If all the weight's on the bottom, it's going to perform like every other club with all the weight on the bottom. So, you know, I just think it's time to bring wedges out of the dark ages and design wedges to give you forgiveness and distance consistency and more spin. And that's what, and in order to do that, it's not going to look like anybody else's wedge. And that's probably the number one obstacle. I've had people tell me, say, well, your wedges don't look like everybody else's. Well, that's because I don't want them to work like everybody else's.
But so when people are trying different lofts, it's like, oh, you know, I've had this 60 degree, but, you know, I think I need a 62 degree. It's like, really? What do you think you're going to do? And how often are you going to hit that? Right. And why do they think changing a loft is going to help them in their pursuit of a lower score?
I don't think people are changing lofts to shoot lower scores. I think they're changing lofts. What we're seeing, the old
out of frustration?
No, it's out of probably desire to get more distance. So if you think about 35 years ago, mid 80s, when Cleveland really kind of pioneered putting a loft number on the bottom of wedges. It used to be you went in and bought an S wedge, you bought a sand wedge, had an S on the bottom. It was a 55 or 56 degree golf club. That was what was there. Then you had all kinds to choose from. Cleveland, I think he was the one that pioneered putting the loft number. So 56s and 58s, 54s. And so then when the lob wedge came out at 60 degrees, the 52, 56, 60, well, so the 56 was a sand wedge. Then pitching wedges started migrating down stronger. And so then 48 kind of became a standard pitching wedge. So this idea of a gap wedge came out to fill that distance between your 48 degree pitching wedge and your 56 degree sand wedge. So this 52 degree gap wedge came out. Well, let's fast forward. Pitching wedges didn't stop at 45. At 48. Now, most all pitching wedges, except for the pure blades, tend to be 46 or 7. Game improvement clubs tend to be 45. A lot of your pitching wedges now are cranking down to 43 degrees, which is my book's an 8 iron. But so what happens now is the 52 to your pitching wedge is another 8 or 9 degree gap. It's too far. So people move their loss from 52, 56, 60 down to 50, 54, 58. So they could close that gap at the long end. But it still isn't closing it enough. And it's still a wedge that's very volatile in distance delivery, and it doesn't match the technology in the iron. So we build wedges from 45 to 63 degrees, odd numbers only. And the reason we went to odd numbers is because pitching wedges are 45. They're not an even number anymore. So a 49, 53, 57, maybe a 61 if you like carrying a lob wedge, makes a lot more sense now than it used to. But because of our engineering, my 51 degree wedge will go, for most golfers, will go 2 to 3, 4 yards further than everybody else's 50. So I'm going to give you more distance in your wedge to keep up with the distance gains you're making in your irons. Because irons now, you're playing a game improvement iron. It's got 44, 45 degrees of loft. It's got a fast pace. It's got engineering in it. It goes further than ever, but it launches high with minimal spin, which is how they're getting the distance. Well, I've never met the guy that wants to get less spin on his 8-9 and pitching wedge. I've never met that golfer of any handicap that wants the ball to spin less with the scoring clubs. But the manufacturers are given that because the bulk of irons are now sold on launch monitors, just like drivers are. And if I've got this iron and that 6 iron is going 170 and the other 6 iron goes 164, I want the one that goes 170. Well, it doesn't matter if it's the same club as the other 5 iron. It's got a 6 on the bottom, it's going 170, and that's the one I'm buying. But as a result, I'm getting a pitching wedge that goes 135 now with high launch and no spin. You play in California. I play in Texas. It is rare when I play in less than 15-mile-an-hour wind. I don't want them all way up in the air.
Yeah.
Can't function. So, and you go watch on the tour, when the wind blows, scores go up. When the flags are hanging still, the scores are lower still.
They're shooting BBs. Yep. Let's take another quick timeout and we'll be right back. Terry, you and I have been talking. Let me just say it this way. You've been educating me about this probably since about 2006 or 7. And in that time, you have continued to evolve your design and your wedges with a variety of companies now. You've been through a couple of companies. I've watched you go through. We've all watched you go through this. What is the difference between, let's say, Edison Wedges, where you are now, and what you were doing when you were starting a new company back in 2006 or 7?
Well, I think when I started my first wedge company in the mid-90s, Reed Lockhart, I was in a box of this is kind of what a wedge ought to look like. And I thickened the top of the golf club a little bit. I was really focused on the sole design. But as a result of the sole being so efficient, it was narrower, and therefore a little weight got pushed higher in the club head. When I did the Eidolon line, I was more focused on that idea of keeping more weight up and high in the golf club head. And so I really designed around the sole design and a thicker top half. So I improved the thickness of the top half by 10 or 15%.
Yep.
When I developed the score wedges, which was the first progressively weighted wedges, that was a result of really experimenting with the new grooves. That was when the USGA changed the rules on grooves, on what we could do with grooves. And I found raising the mass even higher on the club improved gear effect, which improved spin and lowered the launch angles. By this time, I'm surveying tens of thousands of golfers, and they all want to hit their wedges lower. The vast majority do. Well, the club's got a lot of loft on it. The ball's going to go in the air, but if you also put the weight low in the club head, it's going to aggravate that high ball flight, and people don't feel like they have the control. So Score became the progressively weighted wedges when Score evolved into the Ben Hogan company, and the Ben Hogan TK wedges carried that Score concept to a little further. But I was always somewhat respectful about what wedges should look like. And when I tried retirement, and it didn't really sit well because I wasn't done yet. And when I took the idea of creating one more line of wedges, I said, I'm not even going to think about what a wedge ought to look like from the back. I'm going to, as I said a while ago, I want the face profile to be clean. I want to get a good sole so it can have the right kind of turf interaction. But I'm going to completely re-engineer the back of the golf club. I'm going to move more weight in the top of the golf club than I ever have, than anybody ever has before. Not by a little bit, but by a lot. So the Edison was like, I'm going for 100% for shot trajectory and performance. And wherever the weight has to be on that club to give me that goal, that's where it's going to be. And so the top half of this club is thicker than anybody's ever made a wedge. It's got a very slight perimeter weight look to it because, hey, we do miss them out on the toe. We miss them high in the face. We miss them in the heel. My goal was, how equal can I make the smash factor without, compromising your best shots? Because I want your best shots to be as good as they've ever been. I mean, everybody, and you watch the tour guys. I mean, last week at Riviera, kid stuffs it to 3.5 feet on the last hole, but they hit wedges all around Riviera. It's only 7,000 yards, right? So I think those guys average like 40 wedge approaches in 72 holes. 40. Not counting the par fives where they were hitting them in two. Well, for every shot that you saw just knock the flag down 2 and 3 and 4 feet, you also saw a tour player hit a wedge shot 25 or 30 feet short. Hey, they have the same problem. If they hit it 3 grooves higher, it's not going as far. Just like if you hit it 3 grooves higher, it's not going as far. That's in the golf club. That's built in. You can't practice that out. The only way to hit a wedge the same distance every time is to hit it on the same groove every time with the same swing every time. And even tour players are not that good. They can't hit it on the same groove every time. So, but tour players, as a rule, if you look at a tour player wedge versus a 12 handicapper wedge, that's been used and it's got a distinct wear pattern on the face. Two things you notice. The tour player's wear pattern is noticeably smaller than the 10 handicapper wear pattern. And it's also about 3 grooves lower to the center of the tour player's pattern from the center of the 10 handicapper pattern. Because the 10 handicapper's playing fluffier fairways. He might be rolling the ball if he's got a bad lie. Most of us do. He's hitting it out of the rough more often. The ball's sitting up. So his impact pattern is a bigger circle higher on the wedge face. So just by that alone, his dead center hits are getting 10 or 12% less energy than the tour player's dead center hit. So, wedges are elusive. I wrote about this 2 weeks ago and on Golf WRX. Wedges are very elusive in the clubs you're going to master. The easiest club to master is the putter. You see guys that are 20 handicappers that putt lights out, right?
Yeah.
But you don't see 20 handicappers that are fabulous drivers of the ball. You don't see 20 handicappers that are brilliant iron players. You don't see 20 handicappers that are great wedge players. But, you do see 20 handicappers that I wish I had their putting game. I'd be sub-scratch if I could putt like some of these 20s. I mean, I used to play golf with a guy that was a 22, and I'd put money on him against anybody in our group. We had scratches and 2s and 4s. You go on a putting contest, I put my money on that guy every time. And he was a 30 handicapper from tee to green, but he was about +5 on the green. That guy could putt.
And where was it, off the tee? Was it his iron play or his short game that was?
He just had a crappy golf swing. But I mean, the guy was a crappy golfer. But here's what was interesting about this guy. I talk about him all the time. He said, the handicap is to make me equal with you till we get to the green. And then I'm going to beat your ass because I'm a better putter than you. And he said, you can't win money off the tee or with your iron shot. You win money by making putts. And I'm out here because
so
I
he
like
was
the
happy.
action. He liked the
happy
action.
Being it.
He said, I'll just slop it around. I got my handicap. That equalizes everything. When I'm on the green, I get on the greens, I'm going to output all you guys. And I'm going to make my pars and bogeys and take your money.
Wow.
It was all about the action for him. It was all about results.
So what was it that you went from company to company? Was there something that in your mind you were like, this is what I've got to do now? Is it based on all your research and your conversations? Or do you just in the middle of the night get this idea like, I've been doing this wrong. I've got to change the way I'm designing these wedges now?
I think it's evolution for all of us. I mean, it's like you do your podcast very differently than you did them when we started in 06 or 05. Your equipment is different. Your approach is different. You've learned. I mean, you're better at it now than you used to be, right? You're a better interviewer. You got better technology. You got a better understanding of what you're trying to produce. I mean, the whole format of your show is a little different now than it was back then. But the things that work, you carry forward. The things that don't work, you discard. And you replace them with something else to try, right? Well, that's the same thing I've done. The things that work, I know this sole design is the best sole design in golf. But I tweak on it to make it better. But and the same with, I know moving the weight high in the golf club was really good. So I'm going to move weight higher in the golf club until it doesn't work anymore, which is what I did with we went through almost 2 years of development with the Edison Wedges because I wanted to go so far beyond anywhere I'd ever done. I wanted to go too far and then come back. It's like when I write my blogs always start out half again longer than they ought to be, and then I wean them back to where I want the length to be. But I think you go past the point of no return and then work back to what works. And so I had the freedom this time. I'm not trying to build a giant company. I don't have a bunch of investors to satisfy. I don't have a growth curve I have to hit. I don't have revenue targets I have to hit. I just get to wake up every day and say, what do we do today to get 5 more golfers figured out what we're doing? 5 more golfers. We had a big review come out last week, and for 3 days we had 2,000 more people a day on the website when that thing got fresh out there, because the review was exactly what we knew it would be. It was it was black and white how much better these golf clubs are than anything the guys had ever tested. So if results are what you're after, you have to kind of cast away what you think a wedge ought to look like. That's the biggest thing with us. People look at our golf club and go, that doesn't look like anybody else's wedge. No, it doesn't work like anybody else's wedge either. That's intentional.
I guess my show was different a long time ago, but I'm still exposing myself to it because we have Golf Smarter Mulligans now. And so let's hear what I've got coming up this week on Golf Smarter Mulligans with an interview I did probably back in 2009. We'll be right back. This week on Golf Smarter Mulligans is our second of 9 consecutive episodes featuring a series of conversations with the late Tony Manzoni. What I've always loved about doing Golf Smarter is finding the unsung heroes of golf instruction that you probably won't see or hear anywhere else. Tony, who passed away in 2018, perfectly embodies our mission. Along with writer Paul Cervantes, Tony wrote a book called The Lost Fundamental, One Simple Move, Better Golf Forever, which was out of print when he passed away, but is once again available on Amazon, including the Kindle format. Tony's DVD of the same name was also out of print, but now you can see it online only through our private channel. If you'd like access, please write to me directly via email, golfsmarterpodcast@gmail.com, or clicking on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com. Find out more about Tony and the charity we've created in his honor at golfsmarter.com/Tony. If you've ever heard these episodes before, I'm confident that these conversations with Tony can help golfers of all skill levels become better, more consistent players. Here's just a taste of what you'll hear this week.
If you love the game like I do and you want to improve, and the beautiful part about this whole concept is you can do it from your chip shot to your drive. It's the same exact concept. You are connected at the left arm and you rotate your body through the target, and it pulls the club through. The club can't turn over, and you're going to hit really wonderful shots.
That's episode 99 of Golf Smarter Mulligans, featuring our second of 9 consecutive conversations with Tony Manzoni, the most responded to teacher ever featured on our podcast. Both Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Please follow both. Follow, that's the term you're used to in social media, but is going to be new to podcasting. Trust me, it's coming. So follow both. And when you do, you'll be notified immediately when a brand new episode of either has downloaded to your favorite listening device. One of the things that you taught me years ago is that really got me thinking about the whole thing was that a 9-iron is a wedge, right? But the manufacturers put it in as your 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-iron, and then they drop in wedges. That never sat well with you.
Well, I look at our set of golf clubs, and as you can imagine, I look at golf clubs differently than everybody else. I see this differently. So one of the things that I think is kind of interesting when you back away from our set of golf clubs, and let's say you have a 10-degree driver and a 60-degree lob wedge. That's your range of lofts in your set. 50 degrees, right?
Yep.
So halfway between there is 35 degrees. In today's world, that's a 8 to 9 iron, depending on what kind of irons you play. All right? So from that 35-degree 8 or 9 iron, you've got 2 or 3 irons, and then maybe a driving iron, and then a hybrid, and then a fairway wood, and then your drivers. So you got 4 to 5 completely different golf clubs from 10 degrees to 35 degrees. But from 35 degrees to 60 degrees, you have 2 golf clubs. You have your iron design and your wedge design. Why does it take 5 completely different head designs to optimize the long end of the set? Why wouldn't it take at least 3 or 4 designs to optimize the short end of the set? So, if you think about it, your 5-iron and 6-iron and 7-iron are designed to get you up around the green somewhere from 180 to 140, whatever your distance profile is, right? And somewhere within 30 or 40 feet of the flag is pretty good with those golf clubs, even 50 or 60 feet at the long end. 40 feet from 100 yards with a gap wedge in your hand or a sand wedge in your hand is a really crappy shot. That won't get it done. 40 feet from 175 yards, a great shot. 40 feet from 90 yards is a crappy shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you need in those high loft scoring clubs is launch consistency, distance consistency, and spin consistency. Because if you have those 3 things consistent, the ball's going to go the same distance. Smash factor, launch, spin, ball speed. So what I set out to do with our range of lofts is how do I optimize ball speed consistency off of the 45 and 47 degree pitching wedges, off of the 49, 50, 51 degree gap wedges, off the 53, 55, 57 degree, what I call mid wedges. Because I think all wedges better be good sand wedges. And sometimes that sand shot is a real short shot with a close cut pin. You need to hit a sand shot with your lob wedge. You need maximum ball flight and spin. But the very next time you hit it in a bunker, you may have 20 feet of bunker to carry and 80 feet of green. That lob wedge, you're going to have to take a big old giant cut with that thing. And if you catch it thin, it is way gone. So to me, I want to lay open a 45 or 47 degree wedge and hit that bunker shot without having to hit it so hard, let it fly out lower, hit on the green, and release to the flag. So to me, every one of your wedges ought to be a good bunker club for a particular type of bunker shot. You know, by the same token, if the sand is really soft, you want to lay a wedge open and get more bounce. So you might want to take a 51 or 53 degree wedge and lay it very open to get more bounce. But the very next bunker shot may be a tight, firm, packed sand, and you don't want a lot of bounce. So you may take your 58 or 60 and hit it and kind of square it up a lot because you don't want much bounce coming into play on that firm sand. So I think wedges need to be very versatile, and the sole, and that was what the Koehler sole has been about for 30 years since I invented it. And I don't know if I told you the story about where I invented this sole. I was at St. Andrews in Scotland, actually. And I was getting, this is before I even started designing wedges, and I had a Brand X wedge in my bag. And I was getting killed on that tight turf in Scotland. I mean, the turf is very tight over there. This was 1990. They didn't water anything. It was whatever the rain came. If it was May, dry season, it's going to be real firm. And it was just, the tight lines were killing me. And we were at Ochterlony's golf shop, and I saw a grinding wheel, and I asked him if I could come use it. I run back to the hotel, got my wedge, came in, and I just ground the crud out of the sole of this golf club. I made it look, I mean, I butchered it. It was ugly. But I put this real steep bounce. I ground a bunch of the bounce off, and then I put a big steep bounce on it, and I packed a bunch of lead tape on it to bring it back up to weight because I took a bunch of weight off of it. And it was very crude, but man, it really worked beautifully. My brother and I we took turns with that wedge the rest of the trip at Carnoustie and St. Andrews and Troon. And so Turnberry, we had a great trip. But that wedge worked beautifully. So that's when I came back and I said, I'm going to perfect this. And I filed a patent on putting 2 positive bounce angles on the sole of a golf club, which had never been done. I got a patent, was awarded 5301944 if anybody wants to go look it up. And I built that sole into every wedge I've ever done because it works better than any sole out there. And if it's a tight lie, it acts like a low bounce. If it's a fluffy lie, it acts like a high bounce. You don't have to think about it. Just go hit it. If you want a little more bounce, open it up a little bit. If you want a little less bounce, just forward press it a little bit. But it's just really versatile. So, but it was created at St. Andrews, Ochterlony's golf shop.
That's awesome story. That's a great story. There's some conversation about bifurcation again, but do they even call it bifurcation? They never want to say those words. And this is about, is it about equipment or is it about golf course design? I mean, they want the tour players. I mean, they're hitting the ball so far. They're kind of killing golf courses and golf course design.
Well, I think that if you look at golf, it is a different game at the highest level. You and I don't play a different game than we played 40 years ago. I did go to a golf course a while back and play that I played for 20 years, stopped in 1998. I was still playing a persimmon driver, blades, a lot of golf ball. And I went back and played it a while back. And back then I was in my 40s. I was, stronger, longer theoretically. And the golf course played, I was hitting irons. I remember that course. I played a jillion rounds on it. I was hitting approach shots with less golf club than even though I still play a forged blade with traditional lofts. But I've got a driver that's, 400 cc's. It's a good driver. But anyway, so I think that what happens is in this whole talk about bifurcation is, are you unsatisfied with what the tour does to golf courses versus what you and I do to golf courses? Mm-hmm. So, I go back on our golf course every once in a while, and I play it from 7,000 yards and 69, 80, whatever it is. I like it from back there. It makes me go through my whole bag. I hit more long and middle irons than I do from the front tees, where we play most often, because most of my buddies now are up at the senior tees. I don't want to go up there. It's not fun to me to play 5,700 yards. 65 to 68, depending on the golf course, is my comfort zone. I don't want to play a 7,500 yard golf course. But if you think about, if I play a 6,500 yard golf course, to make the tour player hit the same irons on his approach shots that I hit, the golf course has to be 8,500 yards. I mean, I hit it 260 off the tee. He hits it 320. Okay, well, there's 14 drives at 60 yards. There's 700 and there's almost 800 yards right there. So now you're at 73. But when I hit a 5-iron from 180, he hits 5-iron from 220. So there's 40 yards per approach shot too. So now you'd have to put him on 8,500 yards to challenge him. And the game is what it is. I mean, look at Brooks Koepka, for example. He's one of the top players in the world right now. Look at the physical plant this man has built for himself compared to Johnny Miller in the mid-'80s. Johnny Miller was, 5'10" and 170. Brooks Koepka is 6'3", 220. And he's a gym rat. I mean, he is a physical specimen. He could play linebacker for, college team. I mean, this guy is a big guy. And little guys like, you just name them. I mean, they're hard to be competitive out there. You have to put them on a golf course. I mean, like Colin Morikawa wins this week. The guy's an iron play master. I mean, he is a shot maker. And so he really beat the golf course from tee to green. He beat the golf course with his iron play because those greens were very treacherous. And these guys are spraying it all over the place, and they can't get up and down because of that golf course concession was brutal around the green. But Colin Morikawa was hitting iron shots where you're supposed to hit them. And so if you look at the mastery of the golf ball, of the Nelson, Hogan, Snead days on up through, Watson and Miller and Nicklaus, these guys were masterful iron players at putting the ball where it needed to be in order to score the golf course. And these guys today, I mean, you look at, you remember when Greg Norman lost the Masters, one of them he lost before, not the Faldo one, and on 18, he flares a 4-iron right of the green. Nobody's hit a 4-iron on 18 at Augusta National in 20 years. Or 30. They're hitting wedges and 9-irons to 18 now. Well, it's a different golf course if you're hitting 9-iron to it. I mean, look at 13 and 15. Gene Harrison double eagles 15 with a 4-wood second shot after a bomb drive. And these guys now in 15, if they bomb a drive, they're hitting 8s and 7s to that green. I'm sorry, but it is not as hard to hit a green with a 7-iron from 220 as it is to hit it with a 4-wood from 220.
Right.
It's just not as hard. In any way you slice it. So,
still 220.
I mean, but the question is, do you bifurcate the game? Major League Baseball has been bifurcated from the college game forever. They use wooden bats in the major leagues. Mm-hmm. If they had aluminum bats in the major leagues, pitchers and infielders would get killed. And, I mean, they'd never finish a damn game because the home runs would be all over the place. Yeah. But do you bifurcate golf? I mean, first of all, what those guys play is a so different game than what we play. I mean, you can't compare game. If you want to learn golf, watch these LPGA players, and some of them, they don't even know what the rough is because you could lay the sprinkler systems out with their drives. I mean, they just, but they play within themselves because they don't have the brute strength that the men do. And, I watch Lydia Ko, and she doesn't come off the ground hitting her tee shots. And, there's some of them who do, trying to hit it harder and harder and longer and longer. But, I think, Fred, the core of golf is age 45 to 70, probably 45 to 75 now. That's who's playing all the rounds. And I'm 69 years old next week. I can't learn anything from watching Brooks Koepka swing a golf club or Justin Thomas or Tiger Woods. But I can learn a lot by watching Lydia Ko, because she's not as big as I am. So I can watch how she swings a golf club, and I probably can't arm wrestle her either, but I could at least have a chance. Okay. No way I'm going to arm wrestle anybody on the PGA Tour. Their hand strength and forearm strength, they're like Popeyes, all of them, So, but I think you also have to understand, what is the product? The product that you have on the golf course is you want to have fun and hopefully shoot a decent score and not embarrass yourself. But mainly you want to go have fun. You're investing 4 hours of your life. You want to go have fun, first and foremost. Nobody plays the PGA Tour for fun. They're playing for money. Okay. But the PGA Tour is a business, and every business has revenue objectives, right? What does the PGA Tour sell? It sells TV ratings. 70 to 80% of the TV audience doesn't play golf. They don't know how hard it is, and they want to watch these guys hit miraculous bunker shots and long drives, and they want to watch putts curl in from everywhere. So the tour understands their product. They sell TV ratings. Nobody wants to watch the tour player shoot, 280 for 72 holes. We do. We like to see him struggle with par because we play the game. We know how hard it is. But the guy sitting on his couch that's never played golf, he doesn't know how hard this game is. And the tour player makes it look easy, so he keeps watching, and that builds TV audiences, and PGA Tour makes billions of dollars. So they get it.
Yep.
It's why PGA Tour bunkers are so easy to play out of. I mean, they get to play the same bunkers every week, a half an inch of dry sand on the top of wet pack sand. You ever played on those bunkers? Bunker shots are stupid easy playing out of sand like that. Not what you and I walk into and hadn't been raked or, whatever. So
rake with your foot. Now, but before we go on, I just want to can we take one more quick break, and we'll be back right after this. All right, let's talk about, let's get back to Edison Wedges for a minute here as we wrap it up and talk about availability, pricing, and what it is to make some purchases.
So we have a platform on our website. It's edisonwedges.com. We have a platform we created called Wedge Fit, which takes you through kind of an interrogation about your game. We want to learn about you, what kind of irons you're playing, what are the shafts in them, how far do you hit, different irons, where you're scoring shot challenges. And then we're going to prescribe some lofts and shaft and custom specs for you. And then we love to engage our customers. I mean, I would love for one of our guys to have a conversation with everybody before they pull the trigger. If it was possible, I'd love to do that. But a lot of people, they go through Wedge Fit, they buy their wedges. Our pricing is because everything's custom built. We have no golf clubs in our shop that are built except those that are going into a box to a golfer today. So we're $179 for steel shaft. We use KBS steel, KBS graphite, Golf Pride top of the line grips. But every wedge is custom built for you, as opposed to the wedge that is sitting in the retail display at a big store. That wedge is mass produced. It's assembled in China, generic steel shaft, heavy, stiff, may or may not fit you. And it's $20 cheaper than ours. I can't help that. I can't compete with their pricing. And custom build. And we have what we call our custom demo program. So if you look at your Edison wedge recommendation, you go, hey, I want to buy that 55-degree wedge and try it out. We'll build that 55-degree on your shaft, your lie angle, your length, your grip size, and send it to you and let you play it. Go hit. The only way to buy a wedge is to go to the golf course that you play all the time and hit the shots you face all the time and see if you like it. Do you like the way the ball flew? Do you like the way it reacted on the green? Did you like the way it chipped? Did you like how it worked out of the bunker? Did you get away with some shots that maybe you thought you wouldn't get away with? And we'll win almost every time if you go hit your golf shots with our wedge, because you know what your wedges do. And then once you play that one and you like it, then we'll build the rest of your set. And if you don't like it, we'll buy it back from you. And you're out nothing except the experience.
I'll never forget the first time I went out with my square wedges and I chipped in for an eagle from 30 yards out, and I like this club.
I remember that. I love that story. And you wouldn't believe how often we hear that. People say that.
Oh, I'm sure.
But what I love hearing from people is not how good their best shots were, but I like hearing, man, I got away with some today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what's going to improve your score. I mean, when you hit it perfect, it really doesn't matter. If you hit it perfect every time, play persimmon off the tee. If you hit it perfect every time, it almost doesn't matter. But particularly with wedges, it doesn't matter. But it's your less than perfect shot. I want your not so good shot to be better than it ever has been. Now, if you hit it in eyebrows or you lay the sod over on it, I can't fix that. That's a swing flaw. I'm in the club business. I can't fix it. But if you catch it just a hair heavy, I'm going to get more out of that shot. If you catch it a hair thin, it's not going to be quite the heater. And if you catch it high in the face, you're going to get a lot more out of it than any other wedge. And I'm trying to get your not so good shots to be better. And that's what we've done.
You mentioned something, I thought we were wrapping it up, but you mentioned something that I have to ask you about, and that is the evolution and what's been going on with grips. They seem to be getting a variety of sizes now that I'm not accustomed to seeing. Thicker grips on a lot of clubs.
Well, I think overall what we see is more golfers are going to bigger grips. I don't know that that's really the right thing to do. I think it's because I look at golfers gripping golf clubs more like a baseball bat and less in their fingers like we were taught. But what has become very popular, and we use the Golf Ride MCC +4 and the Tour Velvet +4, which has the equivalent of 4 wraps under the right hand. And I do believe if you get the right hand around a little bigger grip, it tends to make you a little less handsy with the shot. And I think it really does help your wedge technique. With our driver and irons, we want a really good hand action through the ball that increases club head speed. But with our wedges, I think we want to be more stable with our hands, a little quieter, as I call it, with your hands through the shot. A little more body core oriented, a little quieter hands. And the bigger grip tends to foster that and encourage that.
Awesome. EdisonWedges.com and the Wedge Guy blogs. Terry Koehler. It is always an entertaining and educational time when we get together. Great to talk.
Well, thanks for the invitation to come on again today.
Well, as Bryson DeChambeau notches another victory on the PGA Tour at the Arnold Palmer Invitational this past weekend, the conversation about single-length irons continues to heat up. But what about us, right? Actually, what about me? I've been reporting to you about my experience with the single-length irons. I've been playing from One Iron Golf, and I've done about 6 rounds now, and on my last round, something clicked. Having this conversation with Terry helped because I realized that I was trying to let the clubs dictate my distances as opposed to looking at both ends of my set and saying, okay, the 23 degree is for 160 yards, the 27 degree is for 150 yards, and then down the line. Also, I pulled 2 of their clubs at the bottom end and put in the Edison Wedges, 49 degree, 53 degree, and 57 degree, the ones we just heard about. And I put those in my bag, and the results made me very happy. I shot a 79. And here's the nutty part. I was 5 over on the last 3 holes. Now, I haven't shot in the 70s in a couple of months. You do the math on those last 3 holes where I was headed. But that's golf, and it always balances itself out. But I have to say that my improvement from the work I've been doing using the Perfect Motion app and getting Chip Beck's feedback is also making a big difference. These are the lessons I'm taking. You know how I talk about my friend Neil? Neil and I play together a lot. And usually we drive the ball around the same distance off the tee. Most of the time we're within 5 yards of each other and usually closer if we're in the fairway. Well, this round, I was consistently out-driving him by 30 yards. He was so pissed. Anyway, I wanted to let you know that things are looking up and I'm getting more excited about playing more often, but the only problem now is trying to get a tee time. Are you having that experience as well? If you're playing public courses, it's really tough to get on. I just called and couldn't get on for the next couple weeks. Hey, that's golf. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions on what you'd like to hear on an upcoming interview, I'd love to hear from you. Follow at Golf Smarter in social media, subscribe to Golf Smarter TV on YouTube, or just click the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com.